The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the sprawling suburban landscape as I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom. My name is Lily, and I've been married to a man whose life was already well underway when I entered it. His son, Ethan, now 26, had always been a quiet presence in our home, a shadow moving through the rooms with a reserved demeanor. Today was different. The house was unusually quiet. My husband was away on a business trip, leaving just Ethan and me. I was trying on a new dress, something to surprise my husband with when he returned. The fabric felt luxurious against my skin, and I twirled, watching the way the light danced off the sequins. That's when I felt it, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, like eyes boring into me. I turned, catching a glimpse of movement in the reflection. Ethan was there, at the doorway, his gaze locked onto me with an intensity that made my heart skip. "Ethan?" My voice was a mix of surprise and confusion. He didn't respond immediately, his eyes lingering a moment too long before he stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. The air between us felt charged, electric with an unspoken tension. I should have felt violated, perhaps even angry, but instead, there was a flutter in my stomach, a mix of fear and something else, something I couldn't quite name yet. As the days passed, the memory of that moment lingered like a ghost in the room. Ethan's behavior shifted subtly, he was more attentive, his eyes often meeting mine with a depth that seemed to pull at something deep within me. And then, one evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. Ethan walked in, his steps almost silent on the tiled floor. He paused by the counter, his fingers tracing the edge as if contemplating something. "Hey, Lily," he started, his voice carrying a new, tentative edge. "I've been thinking about the other day." I turned to face him, the dishcloth in my hand suddenly feeling like a shield. "What about it?" My voice was steady, but inside, my heart was racing. He looked down, then back up, meeting my eyes with that same intense gaze. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. It's just, you looked beautiful, and I guess I got caught up in the moment." The air thickened with the weight of his words. I should have dismissed it, told him it was nothing, but instead, I found myself stepping closer, the space between us diminishing. "Ethan, it's okay. I was just surprised, that's all." He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "I've been feeling different around you lately. More aware, maybe." The tension was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to draw us together. I could feel the heat from his body, the subtle scent of his cologne mingling with the aroma of dinner still lingering in the air. My mind screamed caution, but my body seemed to have its own agenda, leaning ever so slightly towards him. Just then, the front door opened, and my husband's voice echoed through the house, "Lily? I'm home." Ethan and I jumped apart, the spell broken by the mundane reality of my husband's return. My heart was pounding, not just from the nearness of Ethan, but from the sudden intrusion of normalcy. "Welcome back," I called out, my voice a little too high, a little too cheerful. Ethan moved to the sink, busying himself with washing dishes, his back to me, his shoulders tense. As I walked to greet my husband, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something irreversible. The evening continued with the usual routine, but every now and then, my eyes would meet Ethan's across the room, and there it was again, that electric charge, that unspoken promise of something forbidden. The days following my husband's return were a blur of routine and pretense. Every morning, I'd wake up next to him, his arm draped over me in sleep, and my mind would wander back to that charged moment with Ethan. The house, once a sanctuary of familial warmth, now felt like a stage where every interaction was a performance. Ethan and I avoided each other in the daylight, our interactions limited to polite nods and brief, strained conversations. But the tension was there, simmering beneath the surface, a secret current that pulled us together even as we tried to swim apart. One afternoon, while my husband was at work, I found myself in the garden, pulling weeds, with a ferocity that surprised even me. The sun was high, and the heat was oppressive, matching the turmoil inside me. That's when Ethan appeared, his shadow falling over me as he approached. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but firm. "We need to talk." I looked up, shielding my eyes from the sun, and saw the seriousness in his gaze. My heart thudded against my ribs, a mix of dread and anticipation. "About what?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "About us. About what happened, and what's happening," he replied, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, a sign of his nervousness. I stood, brushing the dirt from my hands, and faced him. "There is no us, Ethan. What happened was a mistake, a moment of weakness." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "But it wasn't just a moment, was it? It's been building, this thing between us." The air was thick, not just with the summer heat but with the weight of his words. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the same turmoil that was tearing me apart. "Ethan, we can't. It's not right. You're my stepson." "And yet, here we are," he countered, his gaze piercing through my defenses. "I can't stop thinking about you, Lily. It's driving me crazy." The confession hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I wanted to run, to escape the pull of his confession, but my feet were rooted to the spot. "We need to stop this before it goes any further," I managed to say, though my voice lacked conviction. But Ethan was relentless, his next words a whisper that felt like a caress. "What if we don't want to stop?" The question hung in the air, a challenge, a temptation. My resolve wavered, the line between right and wrong blurring under the intensity of his gaze. I took a step back, needing space, needing to breathe. "Ethan, please. We have to think about your father, my husband." He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "I know. But sometimes, what we want and what we should do are two different things." The conversation ended there, with no resolution, just a deeper entanglement of emotions. As Ethan walked away, back into the house, I felt the garden close in around me, the once comforting space now a witness to my internal struggle. That evening, my husband noticed my distraction. "You've been quiet, Lily. Everything okay?" he asked during dinner, his concern genuine. I forced a smile, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "Just tired, that's all. The garden took a lot out of me today." He nodded, accepting my explanation, but Ethan's gaze from across the table was like a physical touch, igniting a fire within me that I struggled to douse. The night passed with the usual routine, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable, serving as a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken desires that now haunted our home. As I lay in bed that night, my husband's breathing steady beside me, I couldn't help but replay Ethan's words, his nearness, the forbidden allure of what could be. The guilt was there, a constant companion, but so was the thrill, the dangerous excitement of the forbidden. And in the darkness, I knew that the battle within me was far from over. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. My husband had left early for work, leaving behind the echo of his departure in the empty rooms. I moved through the house like a ghost, my mind replaying the conversation with Ethan, each word a whisper that seemed to haunt every corner. I was in the kitchen, the coffee machine hissing as it brewed, when Ethan walked in. His presence was like a magnet, pulling at my attention. He looked different today, more determined, his usual casual demeanor replaced by something more intense. "Morning," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The air was thick with the unsaid, the tension from our last conversation still hanging between us like a heavy curtain. Ethan moved closer, his steps deliberate. "I couldn't sleep last night, Lily. I kept thinking about what you said, about stopping this before it goes further." I turned to face him, the coffee forgotten. "Ethan, He cut me off, his hand gently touching my arm, a touch that felt like fire. "But what if we don't want to stop? What if this is something we both need?" His words were a challenge, a dare, and I felt my resolve crumbling. The kitchen seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the space between us diminished. His eyes were on mine, searching, probing, and I could see the storm of emotion swirling within them. We can't, I whispered, but my body betrayed me, leaning into his touch. Why not? His voice was a caress, his breath warm against my cheek. Because it's wrong? Because it's forbidden? Or because we're scared of what it means? The questions hung in the air, each one a stone thrown into the still waters of my conscience. I wanted to pull away, to shout that this was madness, but instead, I found myself stepping closer, the magnetic pull too strong to resist. Ethan's hand moved to my waist, pulling me gently against him. Lily, I've never felt this way about anyone. It's not just desire, it's something deeper. My heart was pounding, a wild rhythm that matched the chaos in my mind. His lips were so close, and I could feel the heat from his body, the promise of something thrilling and utterly wrong. We can't, I repeated, but my voice was weak, a mere echo of my earlier conviction. Ethan's lips found mine, a kiss that was both a question and an answer. It was soft, tentative at first, but then it deepened, igniting a fire that had been smoldering since that day in the bedroom. The kiss was a catalyst, a moment that seemed to suspend time itself. My hands found their way to his shoulders, pulling him closer, as if trying to merge our conflicting desires into one undeniable truth. The kiss broke, leaving us both breathless, our foreheads touching as we struggled to regain our composure. The reality of what we had just done crashed over me like a wave, the implications too vast to fully comprehend in that moment. We shouldn't have, I stammered, my voice a mix of regret and longing. Ethan's eyes searched mine, his expression a blend of passion and pain. But we did, Lily. And now, we can't just pretend it didn't happen. The kitchen, once a place of mundane daily rituals, now felt like the epicenter of our storm. The sound of the coffee machine seemed to mock the silence that followed our confession. We need to talk about this, really talk, Ethan insisted, his voice firm yet gentle. Not just about what happened, but about what we're going to do now. I stepped back, needing the physical distance to clear my head. Ethan, this can't continue. It's not just about us. It's about your father, my husband. It's about trust, about family. He nodded, the weight of our situation pressing down on him. I know. But Lily, I can't just turn off how I feel. Can you? The question hung between us, a challenge to the very fabric of my moral compass. I wanted to say yes, to affirm my loyalty to my husband, but the truth was more complex, more painful. No, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But we have to try. For everyone's sake. Ethan's jaw clenched, his gaze dropping to the floor before lifting back to meet mine. What if trying isn't enough? What if we're already too far gone? The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the unspoken acknowledgement of our betrayal. I turned away, my hands gripping the countertop, seeking some semblance of stability. We need to end this, Ethan. Before it destroys everything, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He moved closer, his presence a comforting yet dangerous warmth at my back. Lily, look at me. I turned, meeting his eyes, seeing the storm of emotions that mirrored my own. We can't just end it. Not when it feels like this, he whispered, his hand reaching out to touch my cheek, a touch that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. The sound of the front door opening again made us both jump. My husband's voice called out, Lily? Ethan? I forgot my laptop. The sound of my husband's voice jolted us back to reality, the spell of our forbidden moment shattering like glass. Ethan's hand dropped from my cheek as if it had been burned, and I quickly stepped away, smoothing my hair, trying to compose myself. Coming. I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan moved to the other side of the kitchen, his back to me, his posture rigid as he pretended to busy himself with something on the counter. My husband appeared in the doorway, his eyes scanning the room, a slight frown creasing his forehead. Everything all right in here? He asked, his gaze flicking between Ethan and me. Yes, just making coffee, I replied, forcing a smile. Ethan was just helping. My husband nodded, seemingly satisfied with the mundane explanation. He grabbed his laptop from the dining table, his attention already shifting to the day's work ahead. "I'll be back late tonight, got a meeting that might run over." "See you both later," he said, his voice carrying the usual tone of a man preoccupied with his responsibilities. As the door closed behind him, the silence in the kitchen was deafening. Ethan turned to face me, his expression a mix of frustration and longing. "Lily, we can't keep pretending this isn't happening." I shook my head, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. "Ethan, we have to. For your father, for our family. We've crossed a line, but we can't keep crossing it." He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I know. But how do we just stop?" The question hung between us, heavy with the truth of our entanglement. "We start by not being alone together like this," I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside. "We keep our distance. We focus on other things." Ethan looked at me, his eyes searching for something, perhaps a sign that I didn't mean what I was saying. "And what about what we feel? What we want?" I took a deep breath, the resolve hardening within me. "We bury it. We have to. There's no other way." The morning passed in a blur of routine, each of us retreating into our own corners of the house. I threw myself into cleaning, scrubbing surfaces with a ferocity that mirrored my inner turmoil. Ethan, I could hear, was in his room, the occasional sound of his guitar strings being plucked a reminder of his presence. By evening, the house was filled with the usual sounds of my husband's return, the clatter of keys, the rustle of papers, and his voice discussing his day. Dinner was a tense affair, the unspoken tension between Ethan and me like a third guest at the table. My husband, oblivious to the storm brewing under his roof, chatted about work, his voice a comforting, if oblivious, backdrop. After dinner, as my husband settled in front of the TV, I found myself in the garden again, the night air cool against my flushed skin. Ethan joined me, his steps quiet on the grass. "I'm leaving," he said abruptly, his voice low. "I've decided to move out, get my own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? Why?" He looked at me, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Because staying here, with you, with this, it's too much. I need space, Lily." "We both do." I nodded, the relief mixed with a sharp pang of loss. "It's for the best," I whispered, more to convince myself than him. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Ethan packed his things, his presence in the house diminishing day by day. My husband, while surprised, was supportive, seeing it as a natural step for his son. The house felt emptier, quieter, but the tension eased, replaced by a hollow sense of what could have been. One evening, after Ethan had moved out, my husband and I sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. He took my hand, his touch warm and familiar. "You've been distant lately, Lily. Is everything okay?" I looked at him, seeing the man I had promised to love, honor, and cherish. "I've just been thinking a lot," I said, squeezing his hand. "About us, about what we want." He smiled, a genuine, loving smile. "As long as we're together, we can figure out anything, right?" "Right," I agreed, the word heavy with the weight of my recent choices. In the quiet that followed, I realized that while the storm with Ethan had passed, its echoes would linger. The choice to end it, to preserve the sanctity of my marriage, was painful but necessary. I had chosen duty over desire, commitment over chaos. As the stars began to twinkle above, I knew that the path ahead would be one of healing, of rebuilding trust, not just with my husband, but with myself. The affair, though brief, had taught me the depth of my own vulnerabilities and the strength required to overcome them. Ethan's departure marked not just the end of our forbidden dance, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where the lessons of the past would guide us towards a future built on honesty, respect, and perhaps, in time, forgiveness. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.